When it comes to lifting weights, there are many exercise variations you can do. For each muscle group, we can come up with a dozen of exercises. While it's great to have variety in your workouts, the abundance of exercise variations can also be a source of confusion. What exercises should you focus on to make the best progress and develop your body in a balanced way? In today's video, I will discuss 6 exercise variations that will train your entire body well. These exercises train all the major muscle groups and form the foundation of an effective training routine. Now, of course, we can and probably should do more than just 6 exercises in your training program if you train 3 or 4 times per week. But if we have to simplify strength training into 6 basic movement patterns that provide the most bang for your buck, then the 6 exercises I will discuss today are what we need to focus on. Because it's easy to fall for the shiny object syndrome when it comes to lifting weights. You may see some exercises on Instagram that look cool, and the person doing these cool creative exercises may have a great physique too. But looking cool in a gym is not what produces progress. In fact, it's the basic and sometimes boring exercise variations that create real change if you're consistent with them for a continuous length of time. Think about it. Why do people struggle with achieving their fitness goals? It's not because they don't know that a squat, bench press, and pull-up variation are good for them. Most people just don't stick with these basic compound movements for long enough to actually obtain the benefits. So I'm going to give it to you straight. This video does not share ancient secrets and doesn't sell you false promises, but it's raw fundamentals that will push you forward if you commit to it. The 6 movement patterns that we're going to look into are horizontal push, horizontal pull, squat, and hip hinge. These are 6 movement patterns that I incorporate in my training and that of my clients, and for each movement pattern I will share the exercise I would typically go for and at the same time also give you some alternatives. So the first movement pattern is a horizontal push. And there are 2 main options here, a flat barbell bench press and flat dumbbell bench press. Which of the 2 variations to choose will depend on your main goal. If maximizing your horizontal pushing strength is the goal, I would go for a flat barbell bench press. To build the most symmetrical chest possible and have a greater focus on muscle growth, I would go for the dumbbell bench press. Because with a flat barbell bench press, both arms work together, resulting in lower stability demands, and you can push more total weight compared to a flat dumbbell bench press, as supported by the research. With a dumbbell bench press, each side works individually, and you're also able to use a bit more range of motion since you are not limited by a barbell that is touching your chest. Therefore, for maximum pushing strength, I would go for the barbell bench press, and for symmetrical chest development, a dumbbell bench press makes sense. Of course, a combination of the 2 is possible as well, in which perhaps one training day you use dumbbells and one day you use the barbell to get the best of both worlds. The second movement pattern is the opposite of a horizontal push, and that is doing a horizontal pull. Personally, I'm a big fan of using barbell rows here. A barbell row is a great compound movement because not only are the upper back and lats muscles involved in the movement, your spinal erectors also get trained since you are in that bent over position. A traditional barbell row with the elbow slightly flared holds my preference. The slight elbow flaring helps you place more of the emphasis on the upper back. Most people can benefit from having strong upper back muscles to prevent that forward hinging posture, especially if you have a day job that requires you to sit a lot. If you want to challenge the lower lats area more, doing something like an underhand grip row with the elbows more tucked is beneficial. For those that cannot do barbell rows due to low back discomfort, doing seated cable rows is similarly effective. You just won't have the benefit of also training the spinal erectors. The third movement pattern is a vertical pull, and I typically use a weighted pull-up variation here. If I look at the development of my physique, I credit much of the back and biceps development that I have to getting strong on overhand grip weighted pull-up variations. If you get good at doing pull-ups, then there's no other option than your back muscles to develop. The ability to pull yourself up and potentially even do weighted pull-ups shows that relative to your body weight and size, you have well-developed back muscles. If you are not able to do pull-ups yet, you can still strengthen your back muscles via alternative vertical pull movements like a lat pull-down. While strengthening the back through lat pull-downs, you can train towards doing a pull-up with movements like negative pull-ups or assisted pull-ups. Now, up to the 4th movement pattern, which is doing a vertical push, and this refers to doing shoulder press variations. My typical choice with a vertical push would be a standing overhead press, with dumbbells or barbells. The reason I go for a standing shoulder press variation is that this requires more core stabilization. Because we only have 6 exercises to train the entire body, we want to make these 6 exercises as compound as possible. With a standing vertical press, you will quickly notice that your core muscles engage to stabilize your torso. I personally like doing the standing barbell overhead press. You can typically progress this exercise a bit more quickly than a standing dumbbell shoulder press, but both variations will cover your shoulders region for the most part. Now moving on to the legs for the fifth movement pattern, and that is doing a squat variation. And typically I would go for a barbell back squat in this case. Not many exercises can leave your entire lower body being stimulated like a barbell back squat. With a deep barbell back squat, we do a good job at flexing the knee and extending the hip. So both your quadriceps and glute muscles will be challenged to a great extent. A general tip I have for barbell back squats is to maintain slightly lower repetitions on this exercise. You may be used to doing 8, 10, or even 12 repetitions on most of your exercises, and while this is a great rep range to train most compound movements, with something like a barbell back squat, there's a lot of breath work involved, and this can form a limiting factor if you go that high in repetitions. Because of the increased breath work, you may find that once you reach 10 repetitions or so, your quadriceps are still able to push out more reps, but you're out of breath. If training muscle endurance is your goal, then doing 10 or more repetitions on the back squat is totally fine. But to really challenge your lower body to develop, I would typically aim for a 4 to 8 rep range. Now, if doing lower repetitions on the back squat is challenging for you, maybe due to a discomfort in the low back, then doing something like a Bulgarian split squat is a great alternative for training the squat pattern while putting less pressure on the low back. The sixth and final movement pattern is a hip hinge, and this refers to deadlift or thrusting variations. With this pattern, we have three main options: the conventional deadlift, Romanian deadlift, or hip thrust. Which variation to choose will again depend on your objectives. If your goal is to deadlift as much weight as possible and maybe you have some powerlifting aspirations, then the conventional deadlift makes sense. But if developing your hamstrings is the main goal, then doing a Romanian deadlift makes sense, since here the hamstrings are being challenged while they are in a lengthened position. When the objective is challenging the glutes, a hip thrust makes sense because a hip thrust challenges the glutes while they are at full hip extension. I typically like to go for the Romanian deadlift since it trains a bit of everything. You can challenge the spinal erectors, hamstrings, and glutes well, while also lifting a good amount of weight. But depending on your goals, you can make tweaks to the specific exercise selection. So if we now round things up and look at the exercises that we have trained, we have challenged the chest, shoulders, and triceps muscles with our push variations. The lats, upper back, and biceps have been challenged through our pull variations, and the quadriceps, hamstrings, and glutes are challenged well through the squat and hip hinge. I truly believe that these 6 exercises done consistently 3 times per week can produce great muscle growth results. So if you are a minimalist, then just committing to a simple program like this can be a great option. If you want to get more out of your fitness process, then you can treat these 6 exercises as the foundation of your routine. Train the 6 movement patterns about 2 to 3 times per week each, but also sprinkle in some isolation exercises for the arms, shoulders, calves, traps, and abs. But to keep things simple for yourself, always think about these 6 exercise variations whenever you craft your training routine, because they push us forward the most. And that was all for today's video. I hope you now have a better understanding on what exercises you need to focus when you craft your training routine. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Also, if you found this video helpful, then leave me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, and I will see you in that next video.